Dear John, 78 years ago, at the 29th of April, you and your brave colleagues began a series of daring raids which saved a starving nation.
Welcome to the Avro Heritage Museum podcast. John Monaghan joined 116 Squadron at RAF Kirmington in February 1945 as a wireless operator on the Lancaster. He flew on 18 operations from March to May 1945 and also participated in several Operation Manna missions, which were humanitarian food drops to relieve a famine in German-occupied Netherlands. On the 13th of December 2023, Wing Commander Martine Verhulst, Air Force Attaché at the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in London, awarded John the Thank You Liberators Medal. This is a recording of that moving ceremony honouring John's service held at the Avro Heritage Museum, attended by his family and friends as well as the staff of the museum. If you want to hear more about John's service, then do check out his episode entitled Lancaster Radio Operator. I'm delighted to welcome John and others back to the Avro Heritage Museum podcast.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Terry Barnes. I'm chairman of the museum and the trust, and several of another trustee there, ex-Vulcan pilot Tucker, who was flying Vulcans in the 1960s, when life was a bit tough with various problems with Cuban Missile Crisis and so on. So we've got lots of experience here, but not so much experience as this young man here, John Monaghan. So welcome to the Avro Heritage Museum, and we're honoured to have you here and humbled. And I'd also like, obviously, to welcome Wing Commander Martine Verhulst, who is the Air Attaché to the UK for the Netherlands, and she's come up here with her colleagues as well. So I'm always accused of talking too much, so I'm not going to say any more, but just welcome to you all. Thanks for everybody attending this great occasion. This is really quite an emotional time, and it's absolutely brilliant that we are here to thank somebody who has done so much for our country, because without these people and the likes of John, we more than likely wouldn't be here today in the way that we are. I've been very fortunate, and so the people at the museum, to have met many veterans, and it is really humbling. So enough of me, and I'll hand you over now to this young man.
Thank you, nice. And thanks to Kim for reminding me to bring my spectacles. I'm just here really just to say a few words and introduce the other people here. But good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Dad, I'd like to really just take a few moments to welcome family and friends to this presentation today, and especially to thank the Avro Heritage Museum for their generous hospitality in hosting it here. I think you'd agree that there couldn't be a more appropriate setting for an event like this. And as you all know, it was on Lancaster bombers that like this one, that Dad was a wireless operator in the final months of the war. And in fact, it was on one of these operations that's been recognised here today by the government of the Netherlands. As you look at Dad now in his 99th year, it's hard to think of him as a young man of just 18 or 19 years of age, hopping into one of these things night and day, and flying out from an airfield somewhere in Lincolnshire on incredibly dangerous bombing missions over Germany and Europe, with the really high risk of being shot down by fighter aircraft or ground fire. These operations were really perilous, and it's a sobering thought that of the 120,000 aircrew who served in Bomber Command during the war, over 55,000 were killed. Excuse me, that's a huge mortality rate. A further 30,000 were either wounded or shot down or taken prisoner. So only 1 in 4 airmen actually survived unscathed. Excuse me. And it was for this reason that you weren't conscripted into Bomber Command. You had to volunteer, which Dad did. Thankfully, he did survive, although in his own inimitable way, he dismisses this as just being another job, and genuinely fails to see what all this fuss is about. But we know better. So how did his contribution on one of these missions come to be recognised here today? Well, as is so often the case, it followed a series of connected events. We all know that, like so many of Dad's generation, he rarely spoke of his wartime experiences. And at 98, he's now one of a very small band of possibly less than 20 men in the UK still living who saw active service with Bomber Command during the war and are therefore able to recollect their stories firsthand. So in many ways, it's thanks to my good friend Ian, who earlier this year suggested that Dad might be happy to have a talk with one of his friends, the author and historian Frank Plesac, who we knew had a particular interest in Lancasters. And this we arranged. And a few months ago, on a warm, sunny day this summer, I brought Dad along to the museum here, and he spent a pleasant hour or so chatting through his experiences with Frank and with Ian Sanders, who is the oral historian here at the museum. He was also given the chance to get into the Lancaster and sit at his old seat on the radio operator's table and tap away, and I think he quite enjoyed himself, really. Frank then wrote up his recollections in his own blog site, and Ian uploaded a recording of the interview, which I think you've all heard, as a podcast on the museum's website. Now, it was on one of the missions that Dad was involved in that he chatted about during this interview, which was a humanitarian food drop to the people of Holland, who at the end of the war were genuinely starving. By chance, that interview was picked up by the Embassy of the Netherlands in London, leading to the Air Attaché Wing Commander Martine Verhulst contacting the family to propose awarding a medal to recognise the part Dad played in helping the people of her country at what was for them quite a desperate time. And that, in a nutshell, is how we come to be all gathered here today. But before I introduce Frank, who's going to say a few words about the planes and operations that Dad was involved on, might I say, on behalf of all of us here, big thank you to Ian and the museum for their interest in Dad's story, and for hosting the event here, and of course to Frank for his part in making sure that Dad's experiences have been captured for posterity, and for helping to coordinate and arrange everything today. So on that note, I'll say thank you once again, and can I introduce Frank Plesac.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I'm not going to say very much other than say thanks, Ian, that's Ian Font for setting this up. Without that, it wouldn't have ever happened. So, as Andy said, we brought John here. We took him up and sat him. Well, we struggled to get him. It wasn't really a struggle, was it? Get him? No, it was incredible. There's a big spar that you've got to climb over to get to the seat of the radio operator, and it wasn't any trouble at all for John, even though it was for most of us. So it's fantastic. He'd not been in the cockpit of a Lancaster for almost 80 years. Yet we sat in front of those radios and he was fiddling about, messing about, tapping away on the Morse key like he'd never been away. It was absolutely amazing. But not only that, he was pointing out all the mistakes, all the things that were missing out of the aeroplane as well. So quite something, really. But he was quite reluctant at first, but once he started talking, it was fantastic. Some of the things and snippets that he was telling us about were incredible. And as you know, it got passed on to the Dutch embassy, and we're here today. But his aviation is quite significant to the northwest, really. He started off on de Havilland Domini aeroplanes, which were twin-engine biplanes, of which the propellers were made in North Manchester. He then went on to training in a single-engine Percival Proctor. Again, they were made in Manchester. Then, as he progressed, he went on to Avro Hanson's, which there's a cockpit round the corner, and there's a big model on the roof. They were made by Avro in Manchester and assembled here at Woodford. He then went on to Vickers Wellington's medium bombers, twin-engine bombers. A bit of a tenuous link to where we are, but the actual structure of those was designed by Barnes Wallis, who you probably know was the designer of the bouncing bomb that was used in the Dambuster raids. And those Dambusters, those Lancasters, were all made here at Woodford. So quite significant. And then he went on to a Lancaster squadron. He actually joined 166 Squadron at RAF Kirmington in Lincolnshire, and he joined at the age of 19, I think he was, in the January of 1945. By March, he was on operations, and he went on some very, very significant operations in that time, bombing missions all over Germany, right the way through March and April. And he even bombed the significant places of Heligoland, which was a very fortified island in the Baltic Sea. And he was on the very last bombing mission to Hitler's house in Bavaria. So he was on those raids as well. After that, of course, he went on to the Manna operation, which you're going to hear a little bit more about. And then significantly, after the war, he was on the repatriation of British prisoners of war from mainland Europe back to England, again using Lancasters. I suspect it was quite an uncomfortable ride home, packed in those Lancasters. And he did that on several missions, bringing them back from both Belgium and Italy. And then after that, he was transferred to the Air Navigation School, where he was once again on Hanson's. So very, very significant flying operations that he took part in. Very, very significant. He did a total of almost 500 hours flight time, of which 276 was with 166 Squadron. So I'm going to pass you on now to Martine, the wing commander from Holland, and she's going to give you a little bit more information about Operation Manna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frank. Ladies and gentlemen, and above all, Mr. Monaghan. My name is Wing Commander Martine Verhulst, and I am the Air Attaché at the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in London. And I'm very happy to welcome you all here in this beautiful, absolutely beautiful museum to witness this special moment together. Mr. Monaghan, I hope you allow me to call you John. I'm honored to be here today to present you the Thank You Liberators Medal. This medal is not classified as an official Netherlands decoration, but it is a sincere token of our gratitude towards the veterans who actually served in the Netherlands during World War II. The Thank You Liberators Medal was initiated in the year 2000 by the Netherlands National Committee, Thank You Canada and Allied Force. Since it was introduced, this medal is regarded as very important by all veterans who served in the Netherlands during this difficult period, and we will still pass them on to eligible veterans. Dear John, 78 years ago, at the 29th of April, you and your brave colleagues from the 166 RAF Squadron began a series of daring raids which saved a starving nation. The Operation Manna, food drops over the Netherlands, became one of the first humanitarian aid missions undertaken by the Royal Air Force in the dying days of the Second World War. The history of Operation Manna started with the failure of Operation Market Garden. On September 17th, 1944, the sky over southern Holland was filled with paratroopers. That sunny Sunday afternoon marked the beginning of Operation Market Garden. Field Marshal Montgomery had conceived a plan that would end the war in a quick blow. Unfortunately, the bridge at Arnhem proved to be the bridge too far, and Operation Market Garden failed. The Dutch saw themselves facing another winter under German occupation. On September the 27th, the first signal from occupied Holland that food was becoming a problem reached London. The message mentions that there were only enough food left for several weeks. Without help, the people of the Netherlands would die in their thousands. In response of the crisis, the Allied forces requested to drop supplies and German forces agreed to a ceasefire if the aircraft remain on course. Operation Manna started on April 29th. The first day would be the decisive day for the whole operation. 242 Lancasters, the 4 engine bombers of the RAF, flew that day to 6 different drop zones in Holland. Together, they would drop almost 335 tons of food on the first day. The Germans decided that anti-aircraft guns would be placed near 4 food drop sites. They could react immediately if it turned out that the Allied aircraft dropped paratroopers instead of food. The German military police would take samples of the dropped package to verify it was indeed food that was dropped, not guns or other sabotage utilities. When it became clear that the food could be expected on the 28th, the Dutch authorities that arranged the distribution of the food had a lot of work to do. With a day notice, they had to arrange crews that had to gather the food from the fields. The Dutch authorities anticipated that people might be wounded by falling food. Therefore, they had arranged the first aid post was installed near every drop zone. The truce that had to be the base for the whole operation was not yet been reached when the bombers took over that first day. But after 10 days of dropping food, many lives were saved, and it gives hope and the feeling that the war would be over soon. On a day like this, it is also important to remember the brave men who did not return from their missions. Let's remember them always. Dear family and friends of John, all the veterans that I've met have one thing in common. They do not speak very much about their service in the war, and they do not consider themselves as very special or heroes. But dear John, let me tell you on behalf of all of us, you are very special, and we all owe you sincere gratitude and respect for your service in the war. Thanks to you, we can live in freedom. As a token of our appreciation and gratitude, it gives me a great pleasure to present you with the Thank You Liberators Medal. On behalf of the people of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the National Committee, Thank You Canada and Allied Forces, has rewarded the Medal of Remembrance Thank You Liberators 1945 to Sergeant John Edward Monaghan. It is a token of gratitude for contribution to the liberation of the Netherlands during World War II. It's signed by the Ambassador of the Netherlands to the United Kingdom, His Excellency Mr. Karel van Oostrom.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. The people of the Netherlands will forever remain grateful and will never forget the brave men and women who took part in the liberation of the Netherlands. Thank you so much.
Oh, I suppose I have to say something, do I?
Please.
Oh dear. Well, I accept this with gratitude. And of course I accept it particularly on behalf of all my colleagues that took part in that Manna exercise. But not only them, but all the aircrew that used these wonderful Lancaster bombers during the war. They were a great help to us, not only getting there, doing our stuff, but getting back.
Oh, I could go on and on and on. But thank you all for coming. Gracious me, I didn't realise that. Oh, I can't get over it. Yes, really, thank you all for coming. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So that was fantastic. John's received a certificate and some fantastic images, so make sure you have a look at them. Just to add a little bit about Manna, one of the things that John told us about Manna was that they flew low level, and on that very first day, on the 29th of April, the truce that had been arranged wasn't in place. So the crews that took part, and there was only 5 Lancasters from John's squadron that took part that day, they were volunteers to take part. So that's significant. But for me, what John had said in those interviews was that not only did they drop food supplies, that the aircrew, John in particular, they opened the back door of the aeroplane and they'd taken chocolate and sweets and they threw them out to the civilians as well. So it wasn't just the parcels of food that they were dropping, it was their own personal supplies of toffees and things. But John's most significant memory that he told me was that these guns that were in place to watch them, he'd never seen them before. They were flying at 100 feet over these guns. He could see the German air crews with those cannons and anti-aircraft guns watching them all the time as they flew over. It was something spectacular. So that was it, really. So thank you all for coming, and well done, John. Thank you.
Well, that's something else, isn't it? We've been here 8 years now, and this is one of our highlights. This is really one of our highlights. So some of you who may not have been to the museum, tell your friends about it, and we'd obviously like to welcome you here again. And, you know, we've got a lot happening next year, just as a matter of interest. Next September the 17th, it will be 100 years since Avro moved onto this site. So we're going to have a huge event that day. So anyone who's here, you'd obviously be invited if you can remember to come. But we will have a very big event. We hope to have as many veterans as there are available. And obviously, John, we'd love to see you here in September. So thank you very much, everybody. Very much appreciated.
Make sure you follow us in your podcast app so you don't miss out on future episodes of the Avro Heritage Museum podcast.